Longtime viewers shouldn't be shocked, but what you might be shocked about is that the slow slip earthquake location that originally started this whole mess to begin with 7 or 8 weeks ago, 2 months ago, now isn't just having tremors, it's having an earthquake swarm topping out at 3.3. Now I'm going to show you this. See how it says Seattle, Tacoma area? Or here, let's get our USGS on it since everybody trusts USGS more than the EMSC for some reason. We'll go, I trust the EMSC more, but that's just a matter of preference. We'll go put the coordinates in, show you what's there. And again, guys, you need to understand what's going down here. That you started with tremors, and I got called out by people at the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network in some forum, and somebody came over to my pages to say that I shouldn't be showing you the tremor map, this thing. Well, where is it? That I shouldn't be showing you this because these aren't earthquakes, and they're tremors. They're small microquakes, and we don't want to get anybody alarmed, so I shouldn't be showing it to you, okay? And that I'm, not being accurate by telling you they're earthquakes. And I corrected myself and said, okay, fine, we'll call them tremors. You look it up, it's a synonym. They mean the same thing, but small microquakes, I'm saying microquakes, they're saying tremors. It means the same thing. Well, now, look. Do you notice anything missing from their tremor map here? Today, last 24 hours, let me be sure to click it. They got one earthquake in Seattle. One tremor. I'm sorry, one tremor. Well, what's with the stack of earthquakes? Obviously, they're differentiating between tremor and earthquake. So here it is. Here's a stack of earthquakes in the location that originally started the slow slip event to begin with the hundreds or thousands of tremors. So now it's gone up a notch. We went from tremors to earthquakes, and not just any kind of earthquakes. We went all the way up to threes. We went from tremors less than 0.1, okay, so less than an earthquake, all the way up to threes. You know what kind of power increase that is? That's 1,000-fold power increase to go from a 0 to a 3. It's a 10-fold increase to go from a 0 to a 1. It's a 100-fold increase to go from a 1 to a 2, and it's a 1,000-fold increase in power to go from a 0 to a 3. Okay, so here we are. We're a 1,000-fold increase in power introduced into the area the next day. The next day after what? The next day after this big earthquake. Put pressure on all this. So you're lighting up like a Christmas tree. The reason you are is because new amounts of pressure have been introduced, and you're absorbing it like a sponge. But I can tell you, you've already been absorbed all the way down to Southern California. It's already reached its inundation point at the south tip of the plate, which means it's backfilling and going to strike off the coast. Now there's a silent zone, a spot that hasn't been hit yet. Should stand out to you. This is the last 24 hours, but here, let's go back and open up our last 7-day feed. Just take a look at it. Wait for it to load, I suppose. Last 7 days, there hasn't been anything off the shores at all, not even a 4. Now, according to the professionals, there's 4s and 5s that happen out here enough that it's like shooting fish in a barrel to predict them, that they happen that much every week. Well, it's been weeks and weeks and weeks since there's been anything there of any noteworthy size, which means that that's the spot to watch. Now we have a definitive silent zone. It should stand out to you. Now, you might say, well, what about up to the north, Dutch? Well, I got to turn on a different feed so that we can see that. It's one I don't normally show, but we will show the NR Canada feed, Natural Resources of Canada. It's their seismic feed, but they don't update it much, and when they do, it's like lasts for 30 days. So we get a lot of old earthquakes on there that I have to pull out, and it's kind of hard to see. Okay, if you add in their smaller quakes, take a look at what they have reported here off the coast of Canada in the past several days. So they have a 3.3. Look, you know what? I'm glad I turned it on. And you know what? This is proof to me that I need to consult this feed more. Look, they have a 3.3 off the coast of Vancouver Island. Look at that. So, a 3.3 off the coast of Vancouver Island, then a 3.3 in the Puget Sound, then a 3.3 in Colorado, and then a 3.3 down in Southern California, upgraded to 3.4, and a 3.1, which was probably a 3.3 as well, down in Texas. Look at the progression of earthquakes going across the edge of the Craton interior to the coast. Can you believe that professionals missed this? Well, you know what you have to do. You have to have access to multiple feeds and be willing to plot them on a map and publicly declare what you think's going on, which I guess nobody has the guts to do. So that being said, I want to point out a few other earthquakes that did hit in the past day. Now that we do have the Canada feed turned on, look up in the northeast, just north of Maine. A 2.0 striking north of Maine. This is on the eastern edge of the craton, and it follows all the activity over this past week. Take a look at it. Look at the activity over this past week. Now, I don't need to tell you, even an untrained eye could see that's a cluster of earthquakes, a large cluster of fives. Now, fives are somewhat normal around the Pacific, but when you see them occur in succession of one another, back to back across large areas, it lets you know pressure's transferring. Now, look where it stopped. It is just shy of us on the West Coast, on our doorstep, so to speak. Now, smaller amounts are creeping down into the United States already. So we're still on watch. We're going to watch for the next several days, and we're going to watch the silent zone that has not been struck. If you take into account the Canadian earthquakes, there's only one spot that should be filled in here. That's Northern California going into Oregon. Okay? So next 5 days, we're at 5 days, so let's get the date on this. Today is the 3rd here in the States. So 5 days puts us at Monday the 8th. By Monday the 8th, we'll either be canceling this entirely or we'll be talking about an earthquake striking here off the coast of California into Oregon. How big? Well, it's going to be depending on whether or not the slow slip is stopped. If the slow slip carries on, I'm going to be at the end of this 5-day period shaking my head saying, you know what, it still hasn't hit. But the slow slip appears to be stopping. With the slow slip stopping, that gives the opportunity for either side of the area to compensate. Just understand this, that this whole region from Vancouver down to Northern California has moved in the last 7 weeks. Not 7 days, 7 weeks, with hundreds of earthquakes at each slip location. The slip, when it stops, in the past, we've seen larger earthquakes strike, up to 7.7 to be exact. So that's the last example I have for large earthquake striking is the 7.7 that hit in 2012 on October 27, 2012, up here near Vancouver Island. You move forward to 2015 when the next slow slip happened, and it was more like fives striking, but it was like a cluster of fives, going up to 5.9, I think. So it's just a question of, are we going to get a swarm that releases all the pressure in, a swarm of noteworthy earthquakes that gets everybody's attention but doesn't cause major damage? Or are we going to get that one earthquake? I don't like gambling on that. I want you to know what's going on right now. You can see, it's so obvious to me, but I've got the trained eye on this, the progression of earthquakes across the plate. Again, these threes just kind of tell the tale of how pressure spreads down the plate. So if you live in Southern California, I got good news for you. You only get hit after you see movement up to your north. And the movement up to your north is similar to what strikes down to the south. It might lose a couple points coming down, but usually it maintains most of its momentum. The movie San Andreas, right? They got it completely backwards. The earthquakes strike up here first in the northwest, then they put pressure down to the southeast. So if everybody worries about the big one down in Southern California. Well, your big one will come after you get big movement up to your northwest. And it usually is only a day or two between the time that the earthquake strikes to the northwest and the time that you see the movement translate into your area. Again, you absorb that like a sponge. And you can take you can kind of take a beating. I mean, you do. Your volcanoes absorb a lot of that pressure. Your nuclear test sites absorb the pressure. Your geothermal gas and oil pumping operations absorb the pressure. And all in all, that's, a little bit lessening of the blow that comes in. So just take a look at it. Again, if you live in the area on the West Coast, next 5 days, you're going to have your antenna up and be on guard for that.